At my son's wedding reception, my daughter-in-law walked up to my table during cocktail hour and said, quietly so no one else could hear, "Dorothy, I need you to move. I've reassigned your seat to table 16. The family tables are for people Nathan and I actually see on a regular basis." I looked at her. I smiled. I picked up my clutch and moved to table 16, which was positioned directly beside the kitchen doors. What she did not know was that I had written the check for the entire wedding exactly 4 weeks earlier. Good evening, dear listeners. This is Dorothy, and I am so glad you are here with me tonight. Please stay with me until the end, because this is a story I have needed to tell for a long time. And please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. It means more than you know to realize how far a voice can travel. I spent 31 years teaching high school English in Raleigh, North Carolina. I believed in stories. I believed in words. My husband Harold and I built our life in a brick house on a quiet street where the dogwoods bloomed every April without fail. He was an electrician, reliable and steady as anyone I ever knew. We raised our son Nathan together, watching him grow from a boy who collected baseball cards into a man who wore suits and worked in commercial real estate in Charlotte. When Harold died 18 months ago after a short battle with pancreatic cancer, I thought Nathan would be my anchor. I thought that was how these things were supposed to work. The requests started about 6 months after Harold's funeral. I do not think that timing was an accident. Nathan called one Tuesday evening, voice warm and casual, the way it gets when he wants something. "Mom, Brittany found this amazing venue for the wedding. The deposit is due Friday. You mentioned wanting to contribute. Could you help with $3,500? I had mentioned wanting to contribute. I had said that at Thanksgiving, when the engagement was fresh and everyone was happy and I meant every word. So I transferred the money on Thursday. That was October. By February, the venue deposit had grown into full venue payment. The venue payment had grown into catering. Catering had grown into flowers, photographer, videographer, the rehearsal dinner, the honeymoon deposit for a 10-day trip to Portugal. Each call came with the same warm, casual voice and a number attached. "Mom, the florist needs it by end of week. Mom, the photographer only holds the date for 48 hours. I kept a rough total in my head but did not write it down. The way you avoid stepping on a scale when you already know the number will be upsetting. Alongside the wedding costs came other things. The previous spring, Brittany had her eye on a car, a white SUV she said she needed for showing properties. Nathan's been so stressed about his commission schedule, she told me over the phone. If I had my own reliable car, it would take so much pressure off him. I sent $8,000. That December, they mentioned their savings had taken a hit, and their property tax bill was due. $6,000. The following March, Nathan said the HOA had assessed a special fee for parking garage repairs. $4,200. I kept telling myself these were investments in my son's stability. I kept telling myself Harold would have done the same thing. A week before the wedding, I sat at my kitchen table and finally opened my bank statement. The total I had sent to Nathan and Brittany over 22 months came to $89,000. I sat there for a long time with that number in front of me. I thought about Harold's pension, about the money we had saved during decades of careful living, about the retirement fund that was supposed to carry me through the next 20 or 30 years. Then I closed the statement, got in my car, and drove to the bridal boutique to pick up the wedding dress I had also paid for. The wedding itself was beautiful. I will give Brittany that. She had an eye for things. Always had. The hotel in Charlotte was elegant. The centerpieces were exactly right. The lighting made everything look golden. I sat in the second row during the ceremony and watched my son stand at the altar with tears on his face and thought, despite everything, that I was grateful to be there. I had helped build this day. That part was real. The reception was when it happened. I had just found my place card at table 4, the family table, right where it had been on the seating chart Brittany had emailed me 3 weeks prior. I was setting my clutch down when she appeared at my elbow. She was immaculate in her gown, composed. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Dorothy, I need to move you. I've reassigned your seat to table 16. The family tables are for people Nathan and I actually see on a regular basis. I hope you understand." She gave me a brief, practiced smile and walked away before I could respond. I stood there for a moment with my place card in my hand. Table 4. Family. Then I picked up my clutch and walked to table 16, which was against the far wall, close enough to the kitchen that I could hear the servers talking on the other side. I sat down between a distant colleague of Nathan's from his first job out of college and a woman I did not recognize who turned out to be Brittany's childhood neighbor. They were perfectly pleasant people. That was not the point. Across the room, at table 2, Brittany's parents sat with her brother and his wife. At table 3, Nathan's groomsmen and their partners. At table 4, where my place card had originally been, Brittany's aunt and uncle from Atlanta had taken their seats. None of them had written an $89,000 check. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. I am not a woman who cries easily in public, which 31 years of teenagers will do for you. What I felt instead was something colder and more clarifying, like a window being wiped clean. I watched my son laugh and dance and accept congratulations from 112 guests. And I thought about all the phone calls, all the wire transfers, all the times I had said yes without hesitation because I believed that was what a mother did. During the band's first break, I excused myself and walked out through the hotel lobby to the parking garage. The evening air outside was still warm. I sat on a concrete barrier and called my sister Helen. Helen is 4 years younger than me. She spent 30 years as a CPA before retiring to Asheville, and she has always been the sharper of the two of us when it comes to money. When I was still sending checks without keeping records, Helen was the one who used to say, quietly, "Dorothy, you know you should document that." I never listened. "She moved me to table 16, I said when Helen picked up. "Next to the kitchen." There was a pause. "At the wedding you paid for." "At the wedding I paid for?" Another pause. Longer. "Dorothy, where are you right now?" "Parking garage." "Okay. Get through tonight. We will talk tomorrow. But I need you to promise me you will not send another dollar to those 2 people until we have talked." I promised. I went back inside. I danced with my son once, a slow song. And when he held my hand, I looked for something in his face that told me he knew what his wife had done. I did not find it. Either he did not know, or he had decided not to know. I was not sure which one was worse. I drove back to Raleigh the next morning. Helen arrived that afternoon with a bag she had packed for 3 days. A bottle of wine she set on my kitchen counter without asking, and a yellow legal pad. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table and said, "Tell me everything. Every transfer, every amount. Everything she said to you at that reception. Start from the beginning." I talked for 2 hours. Helen wrote everything down. When I finished, she looked at her notes for a long time without speaking. "Do you have documentation? Bank statements? Text messages?" "I have everything. I never deleted anything." "Good. Then this is what we are going to do." What we did over the following 2 weeks was reconstruct a complete financial record. Every transfer had a corresponding text or email where Nathan or Brittany had asked for money, often with language like, "We will square up with you soon," or "Once this deal closes, we will pay you back." Helen flagged each one. She had done forensic accounting work years ago, and she was methodical in a way I found both comforting and slightly frightening. The total came to $89,400. I also made an appointment with an estate planning attorney named Patricia Owens, who had an office on the second floor of a building downtown that smelled like old wood and paper. She was in her early 50s, unhurried, and she listened to everything I said without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one question. Do you have anything in writing that characterizes these transfers as gifts rather than loans? No. Every request came with a promise to repay. Do you have those promises documented? Yes. Then we have a great deal to work with. She folded her hands on the desk. First, I want to establish a revocable living trust for your remaining assets. Your house, your investment accounts, your retirement funds. You retain full control as trustee, but we remove your son as automatic beneficiary for anything he could access immediately. Second, I strongly recommend you close or restructure any joint accounts or accounts where either of them has been named as authorized users. Brittany was helping me manage one savings account. She had been listed on it for about a year. Patricia's expression did not change, but something behind her eyes sharpened. We will start there. The account was closed by the end of the week. Nathan called 4 days after the wedding, which told me he had probably known about the seating situation for at least that long and had been working up to the call. His voice was different from the warm, casual version. It was careful. Mom. Brittany mentioned there might have been some confusion at the reception about the seating. I just wanted to check in and make sure you had a good time. I had a fine time, I said. How was Portugal? We talked about the honeymoon for a few minutes, which gave me no information I wanted and which I suspect was its intended purpose. Then, he said, also, while I have you, there is something I wanted to run by you. We are looking at refinancing the mortgage and pulling out some equity for a renovation. It would really help our monthly cash flow, but the appraisal came in a little lower than we hoped. We might need a short-term bridge loan of around $15,000. I know the timing isn't ideal. Nathan, I said. I cannot do that right now. Silence. Then? Is everything okay? Everything is fine. I simply cannot do that right now. Another pause. Did something happen? I will talk to you soon. Give Brittany my love. I hung up and sat with the quiet for a while. It was the first time in 2 years I had said no, and what surprised me was how simple it felt. Not painless. Simple. 3 days later, Brittany called. Nathan's voice was warm when it wanted something. Brittany's was smooth. Dorothy, I hope you got home safely. The wedding was just perfect, wasn't it? We were so grateful for everything you did to help make it special. A pause that had been rehearsed. Nathan mentioned he spoke to you about the refinancing situation. I know he didn't explain it very well. Can I walk you through the details? I think once you understand the full picture, Brittany, I am not going to be able to help with that. The smoothness went out of her voice. Not immediately, but like a light dimmed rather than switched off. Dorothy, I want to be honest with you. We are in a bit of a difficult spot right now. The market has been slow. Nathan's commissions have been inconsistent, and some of the wedding costs ended up being higher than we budgeted. I understand that. We really counted on your support during this transitional period. I noticed she had moved from asking to explaining why she deserved. I know you did, I said. I hope things turn around for you both. I ended the call before she could respond. Then, I forwarded the recording to Helen, because Helen had suggested 2 weeks ago that I start recording my calls with them, and I had been doing it ever since. The escalation came 11 days after that. Nathan called on a Thursday morning when I was in the garden. His voice was no longer warm or careful. It was tight in the way that told me Brittany had been involved in whatever was about to happen. Mom, I need you to be honest with me. Did you see an attorney about restructuring your estate? I did. Why? What is going on? Brittany tried to access the savings account to help manage some bills, and it was closed. She said she got a notification from the bank that the account had been restructured without any communication to her. Brittany is not on my accounts anymore, Nathan. She was helping you manage. She was listed as an authorized user on one account. That account is closed. I have restructured my estate planning. That is my right, Mom. His voice cracked on the single syllable in a way that reached in and pulled at something old and maternal. Are you angry about the seating at the reception? Is that what this is about? This is about the fact that I have given you and Brittany nearly $90,000 and have not been repaid a single dollar of it. The silence that followed was the longest one yet. Mom, that wasn't a loan. You offered. You wanted to help. We never agreed to any loan terms. I have text messages, Nathan. From both of you. We'll pay you back soon. Once this deal closes, we'll square up in the new year. I have every single one. More silence. Then, different this time. Flatter. We should talk in person. I am not ready for that yet. This is not just about the money. You are making decisions that affect our ability to plan for the future. Our financial planner has always factored in your eventual estate. If you restructure everything without us, without any discussion, I sat down on the garden step because my legs had gone a little unsteady. Nathan, you told your financial planner to factor in my estate while I am still living in the house that estate includes? He did not answer that directly. Mom, we need to sit down as a family. I will be in touch, I said, and hung up. I called Helen immediately. She listened to the recording I sent her and called me back within the hour. Dorothy, they told a financial advisor to count your estate as part of their retirement plan. That is not unusual, but in combination with everything else, it establishes a pattern. I want you to call Patricia Owens today. Patricia Owens called it strategic dependency. Her exact words, calm and clinical across the desk, were, "Your son and his wife have organized their financial life around the assumption that your assets will flow to them, either now through requests or eventually through inheritance. When you interrupted that flow, they experienced it as a crisis. That is the pattern we are dealing with." She recommended I take 2 additional steps. First, update my will immediately, removing Nathan as primary beneficiary and replacing it with a structure that protected principal during my lifetime and directed the remainder to causes I had always cared about, with a small portion held in an educational trust for any future grandchildren, accessible only when they reached adulthood. Second, document the loans formally and retroactively, sending Nathan and Brittany a certified letter itemizing the transfers and the stated repayment promises, not as a legal demand, not yet, but as a statement of record. The letter was delivered the following Tuesday. Nathan called that evening. Brittany called 11 minutes after that. I did not answer either call. I had been advised not to respond by phone until I had reviewed their written response, if any came. What came instead, 4 days later, was a visit. I was reading on the front porch when the car pulled up. Nathan got out first, and then Brittany. And the sight of them walking up the front path together, with matching expressions of controlled concern, did something strange to my chest. Some mixture of love and grief and wariness that I could not have named cleanly. Helen was inside making coffee. I had told her this might happen. Nathan hugged me. And I let him. Because whatever else was true, he was still my son. And I still loved him in the deep and permanent way that does not ask permission. We sat in the living room. Brittany took the chair by the window. Nathan sat on the couch. I sat across from them. Helen came in with coffee and set it on the table and sat down in the corner chair without being invited, which was exactly what we had planned. Nathan spoke first. Mom, we've had a lot of time to think about this. We are not here to fight. We want to understand what is happening and fix it if we can. I appreciate that. The letter from your attorney scared us. We felt blindsided. We have never thought of the money you gave us as loans. You never presented it that way. You have always been so generous. And we were grateful for that. And maybe we took advantage of that generosity more than we should have. He paused. I want to acknowledge that. I looked at my son and heard the word acknowledge and noticed there was no mention of repayment anywhere inside it. I appreciate you saying that, I said carefully. Brittany leaned forward. Her voice had found a new register, softer than I had heard from her before, with something underneath it that might have been genuine or might have been the same smoothness at a lower frequency. Dorothy, I want to apologize for the seating at the reception. I made a decision that was thoughtless and hurtful. I was so focused on logistics that I stopped thinking about what it meant. You helped make that day possible, and I treated you as an afterthought. I am sorry. I had not expected the apology. I sat with it for a moment, testing whether it changed anything substantial. Thank you, I said. Can we start over? She asked. Can we agree to reset and move forward as a family? We can work out the money piece. Maybe set up a payment plan for some of what we borrowed. And you can keep your estate structured however makes you feel safe. We are not asking you to change that. We just want our family back. It was a good speech. I had been a teacher for 31 years, and I knew a good speech when I heard one. Brittany, I said, I want to ask you something directly. When you told your financial planner to factor in my estate, what number did you give them? She blinked. I don't know what Nathan mentioned it on the phone. Your financial planner has always factored in your eventual estate. I want to know what number you were planning around. Nathan's jaw moved. Brittany looked at her hands. Were you planning on the house? I asked. The retirement accounts? All of it? Mom, I am 66 years old. Harold's pension covers my basic expenses. The retirement fund is what I live on. If you have been building a financial plan around inheriting that money while I am still using it to live, I need to understand that. The room was quiet for a moment that stretched. We made some assumptions, Nathan said finally. Assumptions that were probably not fair. I see that now. How much was in the payment plan you mentioned? Helen asked from the corner. Her voice was neutral and unhurried. Both of them looked at her. I'm sorry? Brittany said. You mentioned a payment plan for some of what you borrowed. What number were you thinking? And over what timeline? There was a pause. We would need to look at our cash flow, Nathan said. Of course. But roughly, another pause. Maybe $500 a month? We could look at that. Helen nodded slowly. At $500 a month, it would take 14 years and 11 months to repay $89,400. Zero interest. I looked at my son. I thought about the wedding, the florist, the photographer, the 10 days in Portugal. I thought about table 16 next to the kitchen door. I thought about Harold, who would have been so angry on my behalf, and who also would have told me to be patient and to lead with love. I need more time, I said. I need to think about what a next step looks like for us. Nathan nodded. He seemed relieved, which told me he had expected something harder. Brittany picked up her coffee cup and did not drink from it. After they left, Helen sat across from me in the quiet. You handled that well. I haven't decided anything. I know. That was exactly right. Over the following 3 weeks, I met twice more with Patricia Owens. The trust was fully established. The will was updated. The certified letter remained on record. I also did something I had been putting off since the wedding. I sat down with my complete bank statement and added a second column labeled what the money had actually funded. The $8,000 for Brittany's SUV, which she still drove. The $6,000 for property taxes on a house they had purchased with a down payment. I had also partially contributed 2 years earlier. The wedding itself, the flowers and the photographer and the catering and the venue and the honeymoon, all of which still existed in photographs on their social media, in the white dress hanging in their closet, in the memories of 112 guests who had no idea where the money came from. I sent Nathan a letter written by hand, not by Patricia's office. I told him that I loved him. I told him that I was not interested in legal action and that I was not going to pursue repayment through any formal process. I told him that the trust and the restructured estate were staying in place and were not negotiable. I told him that I was open to rebuilding our relationship, slowly, on terms that were honest about what had happened, and I told him that if he wanted to demonstrate the change he had spoken about in my living room, a payment plan was a good place to start, and that I would accept whatever amount they genuinely could manage, and that I would notice if they stopped. He called the next evening. He was quiet for most of the call. At the end, he said, "I don't know how to make this right, Mom." "You start," I said, "and you keep starting." That's all. The first payment came 11 days later. $300. Not $500, not $400, $300. I deposited it and did not comment on the amount. What happened next was slower and less dramatic than everything before it. That is usually how healing goes. I got in the habit of calling Nathan on Sunday afternoons, and we talked about small things mostly. His work, the neighborhood, a show he was watching. Brittany was not on those calls. We did not discuss the money. Sometimes the absence of the subject felt like a held breath, and sometimes it felt like an agreement between people who had decided to move forward. In October, 2 months after the wedding, I did something I had been meaning to do for years. I signed up for a watercolor class at the Community Arts Center on Tuesday mornings. I am not particularly talented. My instructor, a retired architect named George, who had the patient manner of someone who had seen many beginners, told me after the 3rd class that my color instincts were good even when my brushwork was not. I went home that day and cried a little, not from sadness, but from the sudden awareness that I had been very compressed for a long time and was slowly becoming less so. I also started meeting Helen on video chat twice a week instead of once. Not to talk about finances, but just to talk, the way sisters used to do before everyone got too busy. My friend Claudia, who I had taught alongside for 12 years before she retired to Wilmington, came to visit in November. We sat on the back porch and she listened to the whole story, and at the end, she said something I have been turning over in my mind ever since. She said, "Dorothy, the hardest part of what you did wasn't cutting off the money. It was letting yourself admit you deserved better. A lot of us never get there." I am still thinking about that. Around Thanksgiving, Nathan called on a Wednesday night instead of Sunday. His voice was different, not warm or careful or tight, just tired. He said, "Brittany and I have been talking a lot about this year. A lot. I told her some things I should have said a long time ago. About the money. About how we treated you. About Table 16. He paused. She cried. A real cry. Not the kind she does when she wants something. I think she is actually starting to understand what we did. I did not say anything for a moment. "How are you both?" I asked. "Working on it," he said. "We are working on it." The payments continued. They were not always on time, and the amounts shifted month to month, which told me they were paying what they actually had rather than what they had promised. I had stopped expecting the number they had promised. The honesty of the inconsistency was worth more to me than a reliable fiction. In January, I booked a trip to New England. 2 weeks, driving the coast from Maine down through Vermont and New Hampshire, with no particular schedule. Harold and I had always talked about that trip and never taken it. I posted a photograph of the ocean at Cape Elizabeth on a cold gray morning, and a former student commented that I looked like a woman who had just put something down. I thought that was probably true. I am not going to tell you this story has a tidy ending, because it does not. Nathan and I are rebuilding, slowly. The way you rebuild something that had a crack in its foundation before either of you noticed. Brittany sends me a text on my birthday now, which she never did before. I reply, "It is not warmth yet, but it is an acknowledgement that I exist as a person and not a resource, and for now, that is enough. The $89,000 is mostly gone. I do not expect to see most of it returned in my lifetime, and I have made my peace with that. What I have instead is a clear record, a trust that protects what remains, and the knowledge that I looked at a hard thing clearly and did not flinch away from it." Harold used to say that self-respect is not something you find, it is something you defend. I did not understand what he meant until I was sitting at table 16, next to the kitchen door at a wedding I had paid for, holding a place card that had my name on it, and not much else. Sometimes the smallest things are the ones that finally make you see. I used to believe that being a good mother meant never saying no. I understand now that it means something harder and more complicated than that. It means loving your children enough to tell them the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable, even when you are the only one willing to say it. It means understanding that protecting yourself is not the opposite of generosity. It is the foundation of it. So tonight I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a position where the people you loved most treated your kindness as something they were owed? Have you ever stayed silent because you were afraid that speaking up would cost you more than staying quiet already had? I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Tell me where you are listening from. Tell me what you would have done. And if you are in the middle of something like this right now, I want you to hear me say this clearly. You deserve better. Not someday. Now. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm Dorothy, and I'll be back soon with another one.